Hello and welcome to another edition of ProtoBalls Talk Podcast. I'm ProtoMet. I guess I'm here alone today. Apparently.
Nanny, shaz butt.
You watch your mouth, mister.
Nay. Thou. It's my recycled balls.
Don't make me get the soap.
Oh, get the soap. Because I'm gonna need to wash my hands clean after watching such a movie like this. Very dark themes in this movie.
Yeah. Today we'll be taking a look at The Black Cat.
Nice.
The second of...
Did you like that segue, by the way?
It's the second of the three Universal movies named after Edgar Allan Poe stories that have little to do with those actual stories. And... well, unlike...
It's a great movie. Like a good... great, good, somewhere in that range. It really... Black Cat, 1934, Boris Karloff, Bela Lugosi, and two other dregs of society that nobody ever fucking cares about. Like, they are... The other two main characters are arguably the... worst.
They're more incidental characters than anything.
They're arguably the worst characters.
I wouldn't necessarily say that they're bad characters, and they do have some importance to the plot.
Right, but in comparison to Karloff and Lugosi, they're
oh, for sure.
They're kind of the worst. Not like there's no bad character. There's forgettable characters, such as like the two assistants that we'll get into. But like,
I would argue against that.
Oh no, they have very memorable scenes, but they're just kind of forgettable. They're just there.
Yeah, admittedly.
But the two American, the American couple, is just please go away so we can have more Karloff and Lugosi. You know?
They are definitely the stars of the movie. And so
this was actually the first collaboration between the two as well, I believe.
Yes, the first of 8 movies that Lugosi and Karloff were together. 6 of which were done by Universal.
Yeah, that's right. There is... I would argue that this isn't the best one, but it's probably the most memorable. Outside of Son of Frankenstein. Yeah, Son of Frankenstein.
I haven't seen that, so I can't form an opinion.
Oh man, that one's so... So, this little small side tangent before we get into the Black Cat. We're gonna go into Frankenstein a bit. Frankenstein is such a good movie. It is one of the greatest films of all time. And Bride of Frankenstein is, dare I say, even better than the original Frankenstein, and Son of Frankenstein is still very good. It's a very good trilogy of movies.
And then they kept making them.
And it...
So I suppose we should probably start talking about the plot of this movie.
It starts on a train, as most movies do.
And we are introduced to the American couple, Peter and Joan Allison, who are informed by the conductor that due to mix-up, they've got an extra passenger who doesn't have his own quarters, and they're asked if they'll allow him, Dr. Vitas Vertigast, to kind of stay with them for the duration of the trip. Vertigast doesn't want to impose. He's fine not bothering this couple, but they insist, and he's quite thankful for it.
Right. His character is probably the best described as an anti-hero. He's not a great guy. He's very sympathetic, and he has very selfish reasons for being here, for being in this movie.
So while the Allisons are in Hungary as part of their honeymoon trip,
they're tourists. Vertigast
is there to visit an old friend
You know, like from Wrath of Khan. You know, when when Kirk addresses Khan, old friend.
So they arrive in the place where the train stops, and all three of them, as well as Vertigast's assistant, who I have the name up on the Wikipedia page that we've got in the background. Thamal.
Tamal. Yeah.
Tamal.
I think it's Tamal.
Who
Played by Harry Cording, if there's anybody interested.
And they all get on a bus to head to some destination. And along the way, the bus driver is actually telling them about some happenings that occurred during the Great War.
Oh, okay. So for reference, so the person playing Peter Allison is played by David Manners, otherwise known as John Harker from the original Dracula.
Wow, all the way from the book?
Yes.
Gee golly.
Gee golly willikers. He's also Frank Wemple in The Mummy. Which is a great movie, by the way.
I've seen parts of it. I haven't seen the whole thing.
And then Joan Allison is played by Julie Bishop, otherwise known as Jacqueline Wells in this movie.
Anyway, the bus driver is regaling them with tales of from the war, the Great War, because the Second World War hadn't happened yet, so there wasn't a precedent to call it one. And while he's driving along, it's raining, there's an accident, the bus crashes, the bus driver dies, but everybody else is alive, though Joan is injured, and they basically have to hoof it to the nearest location, which just so happens to be where Vertigast and Tamal were heading in the first place. The
home of Hjalmar Polzig.
Hjalmar Polzig.
Yeah, Hjalmar Polzig.
They pronounce it a number of times.
Lugosi pronounces it in his natural Hungarian accent, and I think everybody else just pronounces it as Polzig. So, because Lugosi's Hungarian, by the way. He was legitimately Hungarian.
And that's the character. Hjalmar is the character played by Boris Karloff,
who's billed simply as Karloff, apparently, according to the credits, which is weird. It's honestly a bit weird.
Well, this is off the heels of Frankenstein, which I think also just simply billed him as Karloff.
This was off the heels of Frankenstein, and I want to say Bride of Frankenstein. Hold on.
You know there was a link in the Wikipedia page.
Yeah. So, Frankenstein and... give me a second. Keep talking.
So anyway, they arrive at the home of Hjalmar and are greeted by his manservant, who doesn't get a name as far as I'm aware. And they take Joan to one of the rooms to...
Okay, so Frankenstein came out in 1931, and Bride of Frankenstein actually came out shortly after this, in 1935. So, yeah, fun.
Yeah, shortly after this movie.
But yeah, so this was right after Boris Karloff basically started getting famous.
So they take Joan to one of the rooms where Vertigast tends to her wounds, being a doctor and all, though his specialty is in psychiatry. Don't worry about that. That was...
There we go. Nope.
One more time.
There we go. Sorry.
Messing with the Wikipedia page.
We went down the Wikipedia...
So Vertigast tends to Joan's injuries.
Yes, Joanne.
I don't know why.
Vertigast basically injects Allison. I think like
they cut away just before he sticks the needle in, and the face that Peter makes, just with just my reaction to any time I see anybody get a shot.
Just, oh.
Ooh.
Ooh.
I do not like needles.
Nah, needles aren't fun, but it's not like they actually hurt.
I
Unless
know,
you're getting your
just...
blood drawn, then that shit's a pain in the ass.
But they are soon joined by the master of the estate, Hjalmar himself, who we see rise from his bed next to a woman. I'm gonna stick a pin in that. That'll be important later.
I'll like stick a knife in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Hjalmar is he's an Austrian architect, but Bela Lugosi actually explains that he went to World War I, and he never saw his Vertigast. He went to World War I and never saw his wife again, and he spent the last 15 years in a prison camp.
A notorious prison camp.
Yeah.
But now he's free.
He's free. He's out.
And so Hjalmar and Vertigast end up getting into a conversation in private with each other where a lot more details are revealed. It's revealed that Hjalmar basically sold out their troop to the enemy.
Yeah, he sold out their entire unit.
And it's speculated that part of the reason was because Hjalmar wanted Vertigast's wife.
The good old David, the good old King David strategy. Hey, I want to bang this man's wife. How do I get rid of him? Yeah, send him off to die in battle. You know, that old thing.
Yeah, and the two really get into a pretty heated argument that ends up getting interrupted when Peter decides to just kind of show up.
Hey, what's up? My name's Peter. I'm here to...
Yeah, it's never made any clear how long he's been there, just listening in on the conversation, other than that Hjalmar just kind of looks off in a certain direction while Vertigast is talking. Yeah, and so Vertigast ends up realizing...
So Joan was treated with hyoscine, otherwise known as scopolamine, which is used to treat motion sickness and post-operative nausea and vomiting.
So, anyway, they get into a conversation. All three of them kind of engage in conversation that is not related to what Vertigast and Hjalmar were talking about. When suddenly, a black cat walks by and Vertigast visibly recoils in horror upon seeing it.
And like, kills it.
He grabs like a knife and just tosses it at the cat and kills it. Which is when Joan shows up and just starts acting weird.
Yeah, it's very weird.
They do take Joan back to her room because she's supposed to be sleeping to rest from the accident. She's not supposed to be up and about.
Funny little scene afterwards is Polzig takes them to their rooms, and he is like, "Here's your room, and here's your room." And yeah, after accusing Vertigast of being crazy,
but Peter actively questions Vertigast and Polzig about why his wife was acting so weird, and Vertigast basically is like, well, I gave her some narcotic in order to help her get to sleep. It might have been the result of that. I probably wouldn't worry about it. And that's the closest thing we get to an explanation as for why she's acting that weird, outside of Peter just kind of speculating that superstitious nonsense. To which Vertigast is, superstition, perhaps. Nonsense, perhaps less.
You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of the one episode from Futurama. Mumbo, perhaps. Jumbo, perhaps not.
And then Hjalmar shows them to their rooms. Joan's room, already established. Then next is Vertigast's room. And then finally Peter's room, which is 2 doors away from his wife's room. Now, as it turns out, all three of the rooms are actually adjoined, so they can actually visit each other without having to go back out of the hallway.
Vertigast has a little funny. He's like, hey, you want my room? Closer to your wife.
And so he swaps rooms with Peter. That night, Hjalmar goes into Vertigast's room and tries to confront him about their unfinished business. At which point, Peter sits up, and Vertigast makes his presence in the next room. Makes his
grand entrance from the other fucking room, because he's like, hey, you want me to leave the door open? And Peter's like, God, I'd be even more terrified if you didn't.
Yeah, it's established that Peter is actually a novelist, specifically in the field of mystery books.
Right.
And so he's read and written enough mystery books to kind of be a bit more cautious about closed doors.
Exactly.
So he's actually kind of
it's a great scene because Polzik comes in and he's like, all right, Vertigast, time to finish the unsettled business.
And then Peter sits up.
And Vertigast comes in and you can see Polzik, he's like, fuck, the switcheroo. I did not expect it.
Shit.
Shit, I've been caught off guard. That Vertigast, he's a clever dick.
And at some point, Hjalmar decides to go peruse his collection of ladies.
Yes.
Just mummified ladies. In glass cabinets.
Not even mummified. Just like freshly preserved. Like you would pickles.
I would consider him mummified. I mean, Lenin's mummified and he looks pretty good.
Lenin?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but that's
it's basically the same idea that they're going for. Although, like, pretty sure Lenin wasn't mummified yet, so.
I heard Rasputin's looking pretty good. I wonder if I'm sure he's still alive somewhere.
Who knows?
For those of you who don't know who Rasputin is, look him up. It's fucking wild. They tried to kill him like 8 times.
And almost none of them stuck.
First they shot him like twice. He didn't die. Then they strangled him. He didn't die. They rolled him up and set him on fire. Didn't die. And eventually they were just like, fuck it, let's just drown him. So that
one seemed to have kept.
That one seemed to have kept. Rasputin's fucking wild, yo. And what's even worse about it is he's one of the main causes of the communist revolution because people fucking hated him. And despite the Tsar being like, oh no, he's a pretty interesting fella, you know? My wife likes him. Dude, you're the fucking Tsar. Why are you taking advice from this mystic fucker? Which it's not really known whether or not they did, but no, Rasputin's story is wild. Just crazy.
But yeah, then we get to the part where Polzig decides to visit Vertigast in his room, only to find Peter there.
Almost as crazy as the story of the guy who assassinated Willem of Orange.
You're the history buff, not me.
I'm trying to think of the guy's name, but he almost got away, but he was tripped, and so the French military tortured him for 12 days in public. Like, tore off his fingernails, gave him a hot iron crown of thorns, just all sorts of horrible shit to him, and then they killed him. Because, you know, he killed a fucking king.
But anyway, Polzig ends up taking Vertigast down to see his wife, Karen. And
a tale as old as time. A waifu preserved.
I couldn't help but make the joke about him admiring his waifu collection.
It's a great...
And I am so sorry for that.
It's a good waifu collection. I didn't even know he had that many body pillows.
So Vertigast learns...
Oh, that's horrible.
So Vertigast learns that his wife died 2 years after the incident that got Vertigast imprisoned in the... There's a mysterious noise outside. I think it's a truck.
I will investigate. You keep talking.
So anyway, Karen died 2 years after the incident in which Vertigast was sent to the prison camp. And Hilmar also informs him that Vertigast's daughter, also named Karen, had also died soon after. And so, yeah. Vertigast has even more reason to hate Hilmar.
Don't worry, it's just a local kook with a lawnmower. Doing drug deals. While smoking a joint. God, I love that man. I'm kidding, obviously. There's nobody like that. But no, it's just some dude riding a lawnmower.
Yeah. So anyway, the visitation with the dead wife is ended. Vertigast returns to his room. Polzig returns to his room.
Polzig's like, all right, Vertigast, I know what you want. So we'll play a little game, a game of death, if you like, but we cannot do it as long as the Americans are here.
Vertigast pulls out a gun. Black Cat walks by, completely freaks him the fuck out. He breaks a window that's nearby for some reason.
Which is one of the iconic scenes of the movie.
It's like, it just freaking shatters it.
That scene and another scene coming up later are the two most iconic scenes in the movie.
I feel I should mention this right now since we didn't before, but Polzig's mansion, home, is actually built on the site of his betrayal of his troop.
Yep.
And so all the armaments and stuff are still in place underneath the...
Right.
So his collection of wives is actually in the old bunkers he used to serve in. This is actually kind of important later on. But anyway, Vertigast goes back to his room. Polzig returns to his room and tells his wife, after quite a lengthy absence, that it was just motorists. There was a bus accident. It was a bus accident. Don't worry about it.
Oh, man.
Tomorrow, don't leave your room at all. Just don't.
Which one?
Now go to sleep.
Yeah. There was a funny scene when the cops showed up.
The next day, yeah.
And they're like, all right, what happened?
Yeah, the two officers arrive and question Peter and Vertigast about the details regarding the bus accident. And
the two cops get into a little tizzy with each other. He's like, oh no, my town's better. You should come here.
Well, his town used to be better, but mine's better now.
It used to be better before the war. Now ours is better. Oh, you son of a...
Ours is really better than his.
It's a funny scene.
They do ask Vertigast and Peter if they'll be staying at Polzig's place if they need to contact them. And Peter mentions that he and his wife kind of want to get out as soon as they can and even ask if the police can give them a lift back into town.
Right.
Unfortunately, the police came on bikes, so...
Yeah.
So it's going to be it probably wouldn't be very agreeable with the missus. One of the officers jokes. So Peter and Joan are kind of stuck there.
Polzig has a wife.
Yeah, I mentioned that.
I don't know. You think it's time to unravel that little...
I want to wait, though. Admittedly, by this point in the movie, I had figured it out myself anyway. So, but we'll wait just for the shocking reveal.
Okay. So then
Vertigast goes to check up on Joan and check her dressings. Yeah. And this is the point when Joan has finally woken up and doesn't remember anything that's happened since the accident.
Right.
So she's kind of at a loss as to what's all happening. So Vertigast basically has to explain the situation to her as best he can.
Well, Vertigast and Polzig have a chess game.
Yes, and Polzig actually comes into the room while Vertigast is doing a checkup on Joan, and you can just kind of tell from the way he looks at her that he's got his eye on her.
For something. For something.
But anyway, Vertigast and Polzig decide to engage in a game of chess. Because both of them know what's up with the other. Vertigast know that Polzig has no intention of letting the American couple leave. Whereas Vertigast doesn't want them to be there.
Exactly. See, it's a very good game of 4D chess when you think about it. Is to see who like Vertigast wants him gone so he can kill Polzig.
That much is obvious.
And Polzig wants them to stay because
he totally wants the wife.
Because it not only that, but it also fucking annoys Vertigast.
Yeah.
And it's like, ha, fuck you, bitch.
Like, by this point, it's clear that Vertigast has some ill intentions towards Polzig.
It's clear, by this point, it's clear that Polzig is the bad guy and Vertigast is the
good guy.
The good guy.
And Peter and Joan are just kind of here due to incredible misfortune.
Yes. Such incredible misfortune as the fucking driver not looking at the road. Oh yeah, World War I. There used to be a battle. Oh shit! Well, looks like that's the end of my life. Yep, that's me. I bet you're wondering how I got into this predicament. Look where you're going when you're driving. Don't drink and drive. Don't eat ass, smoke grass. Don't.
So, while Vertigast and Polzig are engaging in their game of chess, Peter wants to get out of there.
Peter's just like, alright, fuck it, we're leaving.
So he asks if they can take Polzig's car.
Car's broken.
Yeah, Polzig's manservant comes in and is like, oh, yeah, no, it's not working. And Polzig actually has a pretty decent excuse of not going out very regularly, so doesn't really have much of a reason to really maintain his vehicle.
And Vertigast, you know, he already put two and two together. He's like, oh shit, here we go. Here we go. And then, well, can I call a taxi? Oh yeah.
Like, oh yeah, go, sure. Peter picks up the phone. It's dead. He realizes real quickly that it's dead. Polzig gets a laugh about it.
Vertigast is like, oh Christ, here we go.
And then Peter decides.
Vertigast can see what's happening from a fucking mile away, and he's not saying anything about it because he just wants to see how this plays out.
So then Peter decides, okay, me and Joan, we're just gonna walk. And Polzig is like, oh yeah, sure. Just bear in mind that this is against Vertigast's wishes. Which leaves Vertigast aghast.
Aha! The punny.
Oh, you son of a bitch!
You jack off.
Like just the look that Lugosi gives.
You harlot! You bitch!
Like you can just tell it's like, oh, you son of a bitch.
Oh, this is one of Lugosi's better performances. This Dracula and what's his name? Hold on. The stereotypical Frankenstein assistant. Igor. Yeah.
The first Igor.
Yeah, this Frankenstein and Igor are some of his finest performances. Just, God, the man is so good at playing any role. He's just so good. Because he's a natural theater actor, and he knows how to emote. And I don't think he was ever in a silent film, but because he had such experience in the theater, I mean, he was Dracula in the theater days, like before the film versions. It's just, oh man, he's so good. You know.
Oh hell yeah!
Even if he's not giving 100%. Lugosi
and Karloff just play off each other incredibly well.
And it's because they're such good friends. And I'm sure there may have been a bit of resentment because Karloff ended up being arguably the bigger star of the two. Because, I mean, let's face it, when you voice the Grinch, you're kind of the bigger star. Dude, could you imagine Bela Lugosi voicing the Grinch? Oh, man. Dude, Now I need to see that. I need to invent a time machine and extend Bela Lugosi's life to the
Just be sure you come back to this timeline.
Right. Yeah, well, yeah,
Use Trunks' time machine.
Yeah, I'll use Trunks' time machine. Multiverse theory is a thing in this universe, right?
More ways than you think.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, we do have an alternate universe in Antarctica where time's moving backwards. Yeah. I don't know if you guys hear about that.
I think we talked about it.
I don't know. In case we didn't talk about it, researchers in Antarctica found evidence of an alternate universe where time goes backwards. So yeah, that's interesting.
That's a thing.
So instead of, I don't want to say it. This is gonna sound so dumb. But instead of Trump getting elected, Trump just shows up in office. And then he's elected out.
Moving away from politics.
It's a joke, guys. Come on.
Well, anyway, Peter and Joanne decide, okay, we're done. We're just going to leave. And by this point, Vertigast has had a conversation with his manservant Thamal and basically told him, until I tell you otherwise, just act as Pulzig's servant.
Right.
Because basically both of them know that they're not in the best position to do what they came here to do. And so, for the time being, just let things play out.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by Vertigast sort of being an anti-hero. Because instead of, like, stepping up and doing the right thing, arguably, and be like, no, stop, let them go, this is between you and me, he's just like, it's probably better if I just stay back. Don't stay back and wait.
So after the chess match in which Vertigast loses, Peter and Joanne Joan. Why do I keep wanting to say Joanne?
I don't know.
Peter and Joan decide to just leave, and Thamal knocks Peter out, and Pearlzig's manservant just apprehends Joan and takes her back to her room, which Pulzig just...
Huh. John Carradine. Yeah, oh yeah, by the way, an organ plays.
Yeah.
Don't remember if that's a thing.
Yes, I actually want to mention it.
Yeah. They play Toccata and Fugue, which is...
I wanted to mention it because that's like the first time in a horror movie that is played. That iconic horror movie piece of music. The one that you just immediately think of whenever you think of an old, dark, haunted castle on a hill.
This is the first one where Toccata and Fugue is played, which is actually This movie codifies a fucking lot conventions
of the horror genre.
You've got, including up to and including what Pulzig actually is.
And so Pulzig locks Joan in her room, both doors.
Yep.
But at one point, Vertigast does get his hands on the key and goes up and tries to explain the situation.
While Pulzig's playing Toccata and Fugue. Yes.
Yeah, and both of the manservants take Peter down into the bunker and lock him in a rotating room.
Lock.
At first, it seems like they lock him in a rotating room. But while that's going on, and Pulzig's playing
when that scene when they first put him in here and the room rotated, I was like, oh yeah, that's a pretty good way to lock someone in.
Yeah. We'll explain why it wasn't in a little while. But while they're putting Peter away and Vertigast and Pulzig's playing Toccata and Fugue,
Vertigast is basically like, here's what's up.
He explains the situation to Joan, explains to her that that I'm not the bad guy here. He is. I will do my best to try and get you and Peter out of here as best I can. But for the time being, stay put and hope that you can get out safe.
Yeah, pretty much.
And there's Pulzig waiting at the bottom of the steps with his hand out, and Vertigast hands him back the key that Pulzig totally knew he stole.
And then Pulzig's wife shows up.
Yep. Shows up to have a conversation with Joan. And it's at this point that Joan realizes, you're Vertigast's daughter!
That's not creepy at all!
That's not creepy!
Yeah, Pulzig's kind of a fucking... God, Pulzig's kind of a bastard, like the first real bastard character.
And then Pulzig comes...
Like...
Joan tries to explain to Karen that, your dad's here. He's somewhere in this place. He's alive!
And then Pulzig shows up. Because Pulzig had explicitly told her, don't fucking go out of this room, asshole.
Though, to be fair, he really only specified during the day.
Right.
Didn't say anything about the night.
I suppose.
And by this point, it is night. So...
Right. Anyway, so Pulzig's fucking, like, pissed.
He takes Karen into another room. We hear her scream, and... Well... That's the last we see of her for a while.
Yeah.
Now, by this point, it has become established that Pulzig is a Satanist.
That's exactly what I wanted to get into. Like I said, Pulzig's one of, like, the first real bastard characters. Because in the last movie, yeah, you had, like, a mad scientist, you know. He was obsessed with science, and he became a murderer over it. And movies before this, like Hexen, I think it was. Hexen.
Probably.
Where it was like, oh yeah, hell. Hell's a thing in movies now. But this is like the first movie... This is like the first movie where the main villain is like absolutely beyond reproach, utterly horrible shit human being.
Speaking of hell in movies, there's actually a Japanese movie called Jigoku, or Hell, that was produced by Toei, the same company that does Dragon Ball, One Piece,
yes.
Kamen Rider Super Sentai.
Yes.
Well, they had a movie about hell, which had graphic imagery, and they decided to reuse some of the footage of that in a kids show as a imaginary depiction of hell.
Oof.
Like they didn't use any very shocking imagery, but they did reuse movie from a movie literally titled Hell.
For reference,
about hell.
For reference, Mobile Suit Gundam is a kids show, and yeah, Japanese standards and violence are much different than American standards.
They've gotten a bit more stricter recently, if the Kamen Rider franchise is any indication.
I suppose, but back in the 80s, you know, American kids thought, you know, cartoons like G.I. Joe and that shit were hardcore. And then you get Japan, who's like, hey, we have people fucking dying in a war zone. We have fucking colony drops murdering billions of fucking people.
And that's just one show.
And that's just one show. Nice.
It's like, fuck, I don't even really want to watch Ideon, knowing how that ends. But anyway.
So, what is Pulzig to do with his new cop bounty? Well, of course, hold a ceremony.
And it was actually mentioned much earlier in the movie that Pulzig basically invited Vertigast to one of the rites.
Yeah.
Upcoming rituals. And, well, now that has come to fruition as Pulzig has basically invited a whole bunch of people to take part in a satanic rite where he's probably going to sacrifice Joan.
Yep.
And Vertigast is just kind of in the audience having to watch passively while this is all happening. And then in the middle of the ceremony, one of the women just kind of screams and collapses for some reason.
Okay, so reading on a bit more clarification on the chess game. The chess game was actually before Joan and Peter's lives.
Yeah.
Yep.
The chess game was to determine whether Pulzig would keep them or whether Vertigast would get them to leave.
Yeah. And
Vertigas lost.
Vertigas lost because Polzik's a son of a bitch.
I thought we established that, but thanks for reiterating just in case.
I don't think we established that. I think I forgot if we established that, and I just reiterated it. So that's why this ceremony's actually happening, because Polzik's like, all right, I won.
So
Bounty.
one of the women in the ritual just kind of has a bit of a fainting spell that distracts everybody, allowing Vertigast and Tamal...
She apparently... This is the Wikipedia description, which is hilarious. This moment comes during the beginning of the satanic service, when a female acolyte sees something which causes her to scream and faint. She sees something. It's never explained what. Did she see Satan?
And while everybody's distracted, Vertigast and Tamal basically try to rescue Joan and take her down into the bunkers to help her to escape.
Oh, by the way, Peter escaped.
Yeah, turns out inside turns out inside that rotating room, there was just a wheel on the wall underneath an electric light that you just turn it, rotates the whole room.
So fucking dumb!
Now, admittedly, the first door that Peter finds is locked, but the second one isn't.
So fucking dumb! God, Henchman 101. You can't fucking do the job correctly.
To be fair, the henchman didn't build the room.
Oh, yeah, that's Polzik's fault, actually. Fucking Polzik. Your one fucking flaw.
I don't even think he built that.
Oh, no, it's the Hungarian army.
Yeah, the Hungarian army built it. Polzik and his henchmen just kind of forgot that was a feature, I guess. So anyway, Vertigast and Tamal take Joan down into the barracks to try and help her get to safety. She's worried about Peter. Peter has by this point figured out how to escape from the room, but realizes that Polzik's manservant is on his way with a gun. So Peter just kind of stays on to...
He still gets his ass beat.
He sticks to the side of the door... Sticks off to the side of the door.
To the side of the door.
And so then the henchman comes in and is like, where is he? The two end up getting into a fight, and Peter gets knocked down. Anyway.
Right. I'm just reading this.
Okay.
Yeah, so the servant then comes in.
Anyway, he comes in, beats Peter up, knocking him out again. And then he goes back out into the hallway where he confronts Vertigast and Tamal and shoots Tamal, who just rushes him and beats him near dead. Despite having a gunshot... If not for the fact that after he beats the other manservant near dead, Tamal just kind of recoils and acts as though he's now on the verge of death himself, would I have thought that this guy's fucking invincible? Like, he gets shot, but keeps on going as though we're nothing.
So, you want to hear an interesting stat about this movie? So, the budget was $95,000. Mind you, in 30s money, that's a lot of money. But $95,745.31 was the budget. The box office was $236,000 in 30s money, which is nothing to sneeze at. But the Black Cat was 34's... The Black Cat was the biggest box office hit for Universal in 34.
Yeah, that is what it says on the Wikipedia page. So, it's at this point that Joan is worried for her husband, but Vertigast is like, we gotta just leave now, get you out of here. Don't worry about your husband. He's probably dead. But then Joan is like, but your daughter's here. And Vertigast is like, wait, what? My daughter's alive?
Yeah.
And so Joan takes Vertigast to the room where, well, Karen's corpse is now.
Yeah.
And Vertigast is, once again, aghast.
Vertigast is fucking pissed.
And now Polzik has finally recovered from I guess all his party guests getting upset and just leaving because they're never seen again. And comes down to confront Vertigast.
We've made a mistake, by the way. Oh, no, never mind. No, we haven't. No, we haven't. Never mind. Forget I said anything. Forget I said anything. We'll get to that, maybe.
What, the 41 Black Cat?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, different movie.
We may get to that down the line.
Probably not.
Does star Basil Rathbone, though, which is fucking great.
So
Dude, Basil Rathbone's a great
so
actor.
we finally get to the final confrontation between Vertigast and Pulzig. And to help ensure that everything just goes swimmingly, Thamal helps Vertigast chain Pulzig
and then
to
he
an
dies.
embalming rack.
And then he dies.
Then he locks the cage door.
And then he dies.
And then he dies. And Joan is having to watch this whole thing unfold.
And we get the most iconic scene from the fucking movie.
Vertigast has Pulzig at his mercy, tearing his shirt off and leaving his chest bare.
You know what I'm going to do to you now? Have you ever seen an animal skinned? That's what I'm going to do to you now. Flail the skin from your bones, bit by bit.
What I absolutely love is that when he turns to the medical equipment that's right nearby, he grabs one scalpel. It's like, no, too big, and grabs a smaller scalpel. It's like,
this guy wants this guy wants him to suffer, and it is.
To be fair, he's earned it.
And this
after everything that's happened.
This is a pre-code movie. This is a pre-code movie because this.
They cut away before you actually see anything.
But
you see the silhouette of it happen.
This shit would not have flown, even 2 years later. 2 years later, this shit would not fly.
And bear in mind, Joan has been watching this all, and she just kind of wants to escape, so she rushes over to the Thamal's body and tries to pry the key from his hand. Vertigast sees her, goes over to her, and is like, "Here, let me help." At which point, Peter, who has gotten back up and has reclaimed the gun, who comes to the cell door, sees what he thinks is his wife and Vertigast fighting over a key, shoots Vertigast, who still manages to help Joan get the key and help the two to escape, before basically accepting his final fate and detonating the dynamite that's been laced all around the bunker, giving the Allisons 5 minutes to flee before the whole place goes up. And it is such a harrowing scene, and Vertigast is just absolutely content with how this is all wound up. He's finally got his revenge on the monster that destroyed his life. And he's managed to save the two American couples who were just really unfortunate.
The last words Vertigast says is it has been a good game. Which means he's accepted his death, he's gotten his revenge, and he has nothing to live for anymore. And then the house blows up.
Off screen. We don't actually see it blow up.
Yeah.
Cut to the Allisons on a train sometime later.
Oh, yeah.
Peter picks up a magazine, finds that there's a review for his newest book, and it's kind of a scathing review with the reviewer basically claiming that the events in the book are way too outlandish and unbelievable, with the joke being that the new book is based on the experience that he and his wife had over the course of this movie.
Right. And that's the movie.
Yeah.
That's the Black Cat.
That was a much better ending than
then fucking Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Murders in the Rue Morgue just ends. This one at least feels like it has a conclusion. Like it wraps everything up.
This movie is very hard to rate. There's a lot I love about it. Karloff and Lugosi being the obvious choices for why this movie is so great. But then, like, the American couple are just... They're so inconsequential. If it was Lugosi and Karloff playing a game of cat and mouse with each other inside this house, I think I would have had them... I think I would have liked it a lot more if they're playing psychological games with each other before the kills. But I don't know.
I will admit that there are some aspects of this movie that I'm not terribly fond of, like basically the Deus Ex Machina of one of the Satan worshippers just kind of freaking out.
Oh, yeah, that's dumb.
To be completely honest, watching that scene without realizing that Karen actually was dead, I was almost convinced that the person who freaked out was Karen, who freaked out upon seeing her dad alive and well in the same room as her. Like, that's what I thought happened.
It just turns out...
It turns out it's just something that just happens. Has nothing to do with Vertigast or Pulsing.
Fucking Satanists can't be trusted for anything.
Too much PCP.
Can't even fucking do a ritual right. God. At least Japanese cultists can summon elder gods. Fuck you, World of Horror.
I'm also not terribly fond of the fact that the whole satanic ritual just kind of stops.
It's just sort of glanced.
Like, it happens, we're building up to it, the lady freaks out, Vertigast absconds with Joan, and then we just never mention the fact that Pulsing had a bunch of guests there. Like,
they die in the explosion.
Probably. The problem is that the way it plays out, it just kind of seems like all his guests just kind of left, and he just now that's why it took him so long to go after Vertigast, because he was seeing his guests off. It's so weird.
Yeah.
But it does help to get to a very satisfying conclusion for the movie. And so, I'm just going to be honest here. 8. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10.
8? Yeah, that sounds about right. 8 actually does seem like a fair... There's...
Like, unlike Murders in the Rue Morgue, which vaguely tried to connect itself to the story that it's named after, this one did not even try. And admittedly, the title really only makes sense for the 2 scenes that Black Cats have anything to do with it at all. But I think that's part of the reason why this movie is as remembered as it was. Because I think if they had given it some other title, it probably wouldn't have been as memorable.
The movie's iconic for what it did for the genre, I think. Because, you know, it's the first mega mashup film where it's like, hey, here's two
titans of horror.
At the time, 2 extremely popular horror actors. Not yet icons, but, 2 super popular horror actors that are just about to reach their peak. Or for Lugosi, who is just past his peak.
Yeah, like we said earlier, Karloff and Lugosi play off of each other incredibly well in this movie, and they are the 2 best parts of this movie.
Easily!
So it's a very good thing that so much of the movie is dedicated to them engaging with each other.
And not with the American couple.
The American couple kind of become important later on, but for much of it, they're incidental and just kind of there.
And that's fine, because as long as the majority of the movie is about the 2 polarizing factions, Vertigast versus Polzig, that's fine. I like that. Somebody's got to kill Vertigast. So, So that was...
I also like the fact that Lugosi played a pretty damn good guy in this movie. For as much of a bastard as he becomes by the very end of it, for a good chunk of the movie, he isn't a terrible person.
No, he starts off like... There's a stark difference between the Murders in the Rue Morgue and here, and it's all in the attitude. Because in Murders in the Rue Morgue, you take one look at him and you're like, oh yeah, this guy's fucking crazy. And you look at him in
First impressions of Lugosi in this movie is like he's a pleasant gentleman.
yeah, he seems like a nice guy until you know his backstory, and then you're like, oh, you're fucked up, aren't you? You've got a lot of emotional baggage, don't you?
It's not really entirely his fault.
No, it's not his fault. Like when he explains his backstory to Peter on the train, it becomes more plain that he's like, oh, you got some shit going on, don't you?
Like that, yeah, him explaining some of his backstory on the train does help to kind of establish he's got some damage going on,
and that makes him a better character overall than he. Like, it's a much better character than if you were like, oh, this guy stole my wife, I fucking hate him. Instead, it's like, this guy I considered a friend. He betrayed me, and then he took my wife. And now he's a fucking bastard, and he got me sent to prison for 15 years. I hate this motherfucker with all my fucking guts,
and just now I'm learning he's also a necrophiliac!
Yeah. Fuck this guy! I'm gonna kill him! When I get the chance, of course. So yeah,
and he basically kidnapped my daughter and turned him into his own wife.
Even though I didn't know that until the end.
Still, you gotta die.
you die there.
Like, I think that's the final push that solidifies it for Vertigas. I mean, he was totally intent on doing what he was going to do. But seeing his daughter now dead before he could have a chance to be reunited with her just pushed him that much over the edge to finally just go full bore.
And he doesn't... And, like, even as crazy as it gets by the end of the movie, he still doesn't attack the American couple because he's like, I don't have anything to do with you people.
Yeah,
you people are just fucking here because, shit happens.
Yeah, he is somewhat dismissive and is completely willing to help Joan escape and just abandon her husband because he's not around. But when he does find out that they're both okay, he does tell them to escape and gives them the opportunity to flee before he does what he does.
Yeah.
So he's not a complete bastard, but he does some incredibly reprehensible things.
As I say, outside of maybe outside of maybe Lon Chaney from Phantom of the Opera, I think Vertigast is like the real first anti-hero character in a movie.
I've not seen Phantom of the Opera.
Well, I mean, you look at the plot. The Phantom's totally an anti-hero. He's supposed to be the bad guy, but you sympathize with him and you understand why he is the way he is. And that's what an anti-hero is. He's not a good guy I mean,
he may do good things.
He does good things.
But he does them in less than
like Han Solo. Han Solo does good things, but he does them in an unscrupulous manner.
Or like Deadpool, who will just shoot up a place and make witty quips and consider that a win.
Yeah. Or like Tuco. Good old Tuco. Good old baby rapist Tuco himself. No. Speaking of, I was rewatching Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and there's still some more I want to talk about with that movie. I mean, we've got time.
Well, we may have time, but at some point I have to go to sleep.
I understand that. But
so I
real quick though with Good, the Bad, and the Ugly regarding that movie. I was rewatching it, and the scene with the dying soldier. I don't think we ever really talked in depth about that, but that's a very emotional scene. I was rewatching that. I was like, I didn't realize it when we watched it together, but watching it by myself, that's like, god damn, that's that fucking stings. Because it's like, you know what I mean? It's one of those scenes where it's like, God, that's really sad. Because it really... The thing about The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly is it's got very heavy anti-war undertones to it. Because as much of a bad guy Angel Eyes is, and as much of a bastard Tuco is, they're absolutely fucking horrified at just the sheer loss of life that goes on around them during the time period. Because everybody's dying for no good reason.
Whether it be due to the wild frontiers of lawlessness in the Americas and the Mexican regions,
or just the war going on around them between two factions. One faction, morally in the wrong. Let's not fucking dismiss that. The Confederacy was in the wrong. Fuck you. 5 years. 5 fucking years. What's gone on longer than the Confederacy? Gundam's been around longer than the Confederacy.
Dragon Ball.
Dragon Ball's been around longer than the Confederacy.
Naruto, One Piece.
I'm trying to think of a 5-season show.
I want to say Transformers, but I don't think that actually lasted for 5 years.
No. Fuck. I was gonna say, the Revolutionary War lasted longer than the Confederacy did. That shit took like 6 years. So yeah, fuck the Confederacy. Good, the bad, and the ugly. Definitely worth a rewatch. Still 10 out of 10, I think. I think that's what we rated it.
I'm pretty sure, yeah.
But yeah, the scene with the dying soldier at the end, it's right before the cemetery. Very emotional scene. Also, it's where Clint Eastwood gets his poncho.
Yay.
With that said, any recommendations?
Yes, and this one's actually in the same vein of this topic that we've been talking about with regard to this movie. I want to recommend the manga Eko Eko Azaraku, which is a series about a high school girl who is, in fact, a powerful mistress of black magic. And it's a rather anthologic series in that each chapter is its own standalone story. And the lead character, Misa, is, depending on what's happening in the chapter, at times a hero, at times a villain, and sometimes just a neutral outside observer. And, I feel that the series is incredibly well researched with regards to how black magic is performed all over the world, because each chapter has some new form of black magic. And I strongly recommend giving this series a try. It's not like a series in which there's an ongoing storyline. It's just a bunch of short stories that happen to involve this one character, whether it be heavily involved or just kind of a minor influence to explain stuff to the audience.
Sorry, I went off on a tangent. I ended up on the Howling Man because John Carradine's was in the Black Cat, who was also Brother Jerome in the Howling Man from Twilight Zone. That's the one where the guy is locked in the closet, and the guy shows up at the monastery, and the monks are like, "Don't open that door. Don't let him out. He is Satan."
I'm trying to remember if I've ever seen that one.
Oh, it's such a good.
I might have, because I've watched a lot of Twilight Zone and really should pick up the series on DVD.
I'm recommending the Twilight Zone.
All right, that is a strong recommendation.
Dude, it's the fucking Twilight. If you've never seen the Twilight Zone, watch it. I don't even need to explain it. You've heard the theme. You know the opening. It's been parodied to death.
For context, for anybody who is an idiot, The Twilight Zone was an anthologic television series hosted by Rod Serling, in which
God rest his soul.
In which each episode focused on a short story involving supernatural and science fiction related themes and elements, and a lot of times they actually had some sort of moral lesson to.
A lot of the time, like the Howling Man in particular is basically an allegory for wolves in sheep's clothing. Don't believe what everybody tells you.
Then you've got episodes like Eye of the Beholder, where for the vast majority of the episode, all the characters are shrouded in darkness, and then it finally gets revealed that everybody who's normal looks ugly by our standards, and the person who thinks that she's ugly looks beautiful by our standards. Great reveal.
Yeah. The most famous episode is the one with William Shatner in it.
There's a man on the wing of the plane.
There's a man on the wing of the plane. There's a thing out there. Ah!
Such an iconic episode that they remade it for the movie.
Nice. Yeah. So with that said, yeah, that's my recommendation there.
Good, very strong recommendation.
A what? A what? Weird West. What? What?
For context of what My Recycled Balls is responding to, he's looking at the genre of the film The Beast of Hollow Mountain, which is basically a Western movie in which a dinosaur shows up for the final act.
What the fuck? What? No.
It's honestly a pretty darn good movie.
1956, too. God, that's weird. That's weird. We gotta wrap this episode up. Yeah. I don't want to get too wrapped up in it.
I'm ProtoMet.
This is My Recycled Balls.
See ya.
See ya.